Welcome to VIDEODRONE. Long live the new pod. My name is Ben Vanel. I'm joined by my co-host, Tommy Dasilo. Tommy, you want to tell the kind folks what this goddamn podcast is?
Yeah, this is our new little offshoot from Filthy Casuals, our video games podcast, where once a week we're going to be chatting new release movies, TV, doing recaps. We're kicking this off. We will be talking later in this episode about Severance Season 2. And joining us for the run of Severance Season 2, at the very least, we are going to have our dear friend, Jen Fricker.
Hello. It's so good to be here. It's so good to be severancing with you.
Yeah.
Severed. It's so
We're all
good to be severed. It's so good to be joining you guys on the severed floor. Is that what they say?
Yes, yes.
I watched 9 hours of Severance yesterday.
Right,
Yes.
so
In preparation for this. That's why I look like this.
we asked you if you wanted to join us to recap Season 2, and you said, sure. I've never watched Season 1, and I did think, well, this is very high stakes because you may well then binge one and go, I fucking hate this show, but
Yeah.
I've already committed to recapping Season 2.
No, I love the show, but I did hear the theme in my dreams, which was horrific.
Yeah, well,
I'm
I'm jealous because, I mean, yeah, well, the second half of this, if you haven't watched Season 2, Episode 1 yet, we'll give a clear, like, kind of spoiler warning when we're
Yes.
getting deep into the weeds of that episode. But what I will say is, I'm jealous of you watching 9 hours of the opening theme because Season 2, Episode 1, they don't play that goddamn. It's been 3 years and they don't play the theme for us.
Yeah, there's too much content to pack in, right? That's usually what they do. If there's like a bumper episode, even though this is not a network television show,
Yeah.
and they can make it as long as they want. I did like what they did though, and we'll get to it later.
Yeah. Because
Um,
Severance is one of those rare shows that still has like a 4-minute intro, like a
Yeah.
full, like so often now it's like Breaking Bad style, just like a word comes up on the screen and that's it. And so
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
a show where it's like you go, oh, I'm sitting through a little short film here.
The credits are dope. Yeah.
Yeah,
The
they're
credits are
awesome.
really, like, I was trying to figure out what kind of animation style they are because they're kind of like gooey, uncanny valley type. Anyway, we'll talk about it later.
We'll talk about it later. We got new release films and things of that nature to talk about.
man.
Who wants to kick us off? Who's seen something? I've seen something recently at the multiplex that I think is out this week. I went to a preview screening
ooh,
of A Complete Unknown.
Ooh, how was?
Yeah, have you seen it, Jen?
No, I haven't seen it. I didn't get invited to that one. I don't know.
Ooh.
They were like, Bob Dylan's for the boys.
Man, I had two of the most Bob Dylan.
Oh, the future Bob Dylan kill 'em all.
Yeah, that's your parody, Odd Dylan. That's where you make all these songs to be about eating pizza or whatever. Yeah, two old boys behind me, clearly just like Dylan heads. And it had, these like preview screenings. They'll have basically like the poster up on the screen before it starts, and they had a little thing saying, stick around after the credits for a virtual in conversation with the director and Timothée Chalamet. And one of these old boys is sitting there looking at the screen beforehand. He's like, Timothée Chalamet, are you familiar with him? Like, yeah, I think he's been in some stuff. I think he was maybe in that film June. Did you hear about that? And he's like, June. Oh, no, I don't think I remember that one. You know what it's like?
How out of touch are these?
I know,
old cunts?
like, not just like, oh, I don't know what Chapel Roan is or whatever, but like, truly, I would say Chalamet is at the point where to be tapped in enough that you're being invited to a preview screening
Yeah,
of a
that's
film.
what I was just about to say. Yeah. Like, you're on some list because you have some connection to the culture. And then to be like, Timothée
Me and Lauren were
Chalamet.
debating it, and we were like, do you think they're like moderators of like a Bob Dylan message board or something, and that's why they got invited? Yeah.
That could be it. They're on the Bob Dylan fan mailing list, or they're future Melbourne International Comedy Festival reviewers. That's the only other thing I can.
I didn't like the movie. Everyone else did.
Yeah.
I found the air conditioning too prominent.
People were
1.5
laughing
stars.
and clapping, but I think they were just friends of Timothée Chalamet.
Yeah, one of them was then like, oh, so is he going to be here now tonight? And his friend was like,
God.
no, I don't think so.
Jesus Christ.
I don't think he's popping into the Astor Theatre. Although they did have a Q&A with Robbie Williams there about 2 weeks ago. So you never know.
I am loving the Robbie press tour, honestly.
Yeah.
I like, again, that movie, no one's watching it, and it will be a gem that people will find in a couple years. But we are getting the press tour of a lifetime, and we will not have a press tour like this again.
Did you see he married some people? He was at the New York Q&A, and he's like, what is he? He's like a registered celebrant or something like that?
He must be, yeah.
Yeah, and some people in the crowd were like, Robbie, will you? yeah, I got a question.
Yeah. Marry me, Robbie.
That's
yeah,
sick.
well, I get that all the time. Like, no, like, marry me to my partner. Like,
To my lover.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, how is the film?
I did not like it at all.
Wait, okay. In comparison to the best musical biopic of recent years, Better Man, the story of Robbie Williams, how does it compare?
It's definitely, I think, for me at least, suffering in the wake of that, where you see Better Man and you go, yeah, this is just fun. This is what it should be. Obviously, there's room to tell the, like, serious, bad stuff that's happened. You want the climb, and then you want the descent and all that kind of stuff. But this film just felt so lifeless, and a big part of it for me was, and I don't know, it's always weird before these films are like fully out, and you kind of don't know like the temperature of like what people en masse are thinking. But I hated Chalamet in this film.
Really?
I really did not think it was a good... okay, this is going to sound insane, but bear with me. I think Bob Dylan, in terms of doing a performance of him, he's a bit like the Joker. In the sense that doing a good performance of him, there's so much heavy lifting is being done by just... the character that you're portraying.
Right.
You
the
act
voice,
like a bit of a dickhead and you put on the
Yeah.
voice and you've got the jacket and the sunnies and the hair.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's what's, like the Joker is like, if you're a good actor, that's a fun role to get into because you get to be a silly, crazy clown. And not to say that, the Heath Ledgers and the Joaquin Phoenixes haven't been like great performances because they are, but it's not like you're tapping into something that has no sort of, established thing to it. Like, I just think the whole thing of like the character that you're portraying is, if you're a good actor, it is kind of easy to tap into.
At least it gives you this huge foundation to, like you said with Heath Ledger and Joaquin, give huge, like, extra good performances.
You get to be big. Yeah, you get to be really big and stupid.
And you get this springboard based on, the cultural, like, awareness of that character. And then, I don't know, did you guys see that film from like 10 years ago where like 8 people played Bob Dylan?
This is the one I was going to talk about because, I'm not there. It's on SBS On Demand at the moment. It's directed by Todd Haynes, who directed Tar and May December. And it's like, I think 4 different actors, including Cate Blanchett playing Bob Dylan. And so, like, what you're saying about the Joker is dead on. In that what they're doing is taking, like, the cultural idea of someone and playing with that.
Yeah.
And from what you're saying, it just sounds like Timothée Chalamet is just doing an extended scene of that rather than bringing anything real to it.
It kind of felt like half SNL skit, half like
Really?
Super Bowl ad, if that makes sense. Like, I've never been more aware that I was watching a movie. And again, this isn't really anyone's fault involved in the film, but just every time he's on screen, you go, yeah, I'm watching a young boy pretend to be Bob Dylan, a man he learned about a month ago when he got emailed asking him to do this film. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just is, It's like, I found it impossible to get lost in his performance. I found it impossible to get lost in the world of the film. Like, every time things were happening, I was like, oh, they've set a camera up here and now they're like doing like a tracking. Like, it all just feels, you're so aware of how like staged everything is. Like, the idea that you could watch this and be immersed in it is like completely foreign to me.
Do you feel like if the main character was portrayed by a CGI monkey, you would have gotten more into it.
I mean, weirdly, I think it's funny because I get the reason for doing that in the Robbie Williams film is that, the metaphor of he's always felt like a performing monkey, etc., etc. But weirdly, something like that would almost work better for a guy like Bob Dylan, who has famously withheld a lot of things about himself and kind of like fucked around with his own self-mythology and like made stuff up about his background and all this kind of stuff. So it like weirdly a move like that for a Bob Dylan film kind of makes almost more sense,
right?
Because it's like this guy doesn't really care about having an accurate like representation of his past and his story out there. So if you did really heighten it, and that's why the I'm Not There makes a lot of sense. Like, why not jump around and have it be all fragmented? Because that's kind of what the public has of him in their heads anyway.
Well, yeah, it's a person that at his heart doesn't want to truly be known as a human being, but as an icon. So then, like, if you do a movie being like, but let's get to the real juice of him, it's like, well, it seems kind of like counterintuitive to what he means to people.
Right,
if that makes sense.
Casting the most famous current young actor as him. Yeah, like making it a CGI monkey. And it's insane that this is a genuine example. It takes away that lack of immersion you're feeling because it is an incredibly famous actor playing an incredibly famous person. It's like, okay, well, obviously this whole thing is a charade. This whole thing is an artifice. So let's lean into it. And yeah, they've done the opposite. This is the guy who directed Walk the Line as well, which it's like, dude,
okay, yeah.
You made like maybe the last doable musical biopic before it became so cliched that everyone rolls their eyes at it. Although apparently the people didn't roll their eyes at Bohemian Rhapsody, which is insane to me. But
yeah, that's nuts.
yeah, that same guy going back to the same well again and hoping that it's just still going to work somehow is crazy.
I like a biopic. I especially don't mind when it is, Walk the Line, I really like. Mm-hmm. I hadn't seen it until quite recently, and it is very like by the numbers. Yeah. But that's fine, but I also think too, it's like Dylan's story doesn't have the same, I don't know, like peaks and valleys of like, yeah, there's a bit, Johnny Cash is in this, and there's a bit where it's a guy pretending to be Dylan and he's going, and then you've got a guy being a really drunk Johnny Cash who's like, hey, and it's like, what the fuck am I watching? Like, truly, this is like the Celebrity Jeopardy thing on SNL. Yeah, like, right. What am I watching?
It sounds like, did you guys ever watch Dewey Cox, the parody of Walk the Line?
Yeah.
And the scene where I think it's like Jason Schwartzman and a bunch of other
Jack Black.
Playing the Beatles, and every line is, yes, well, I'm John Lennon and I'm in the Beatles, exactly. And I think that you, Dewey Cox, are the future of rock and roll. And it's
I wonder if when you see those things where certain directors have like their list of rules for the set, it's like if your phone goes off, you owe everyone, $100 or whatever. I reckon if you're making a musical biopic now, it's got to be rule on set. No one is allowed to reference Dewey Cox in any way, even in passing, because it'll all make us really aware that what we're doing here is very, very silly.
It'll break our fucking spirits.
I don't want to see the movie because I'm just not it's not in my, other than maybe like I want to see it because it's in Oscar's contention. But do you feel like it's Oscar baity? Like, is it?
It is one of those ones where it is just like, why does this exist other than for this guy to be like, and reading stuff about how he's like, someone was telling me from the Sydney preview that someone got up beforehand and was like, he's not just playing Dylan, he's channeling Dylan, and it's like, Dylan's still alive. Like, can you channel someone? Isn't it meant to be like their spirit was talking through you? Like, if they're still there, like it doesn't. I don't know. That doesn't really make sense as a comment to me.
Yeah.
But it all of it feels very much like that. So the end of it, the last like maybe third is about the Newport Folk Festival and him going electric, and that stuff is good. I liked that bit, like the whole thing of him like playing the songs, and you've got the crowd booing, and there's like people backstage getting into fist fights over whether or not to cut the speakers and all that kind of stuff. And that's kind of fun. Like, that's at least stuff's happening.
From like what little I know about Dylan in terms of like, his personal life and his career trajectory, isn't he just kind of beloved pretty much immediately?
Yeah.
He's hailed as this folk hero, this like renegade poet. And then that one bit of him going electric is the only bit of conflict in his entire career.
Exactly. And that's what I was saying, and why he's like not the best fodder for a film like this. Because you need the bit where the person is like off their head on heroin and it fucks their career for a bit. And then they have the, Robbie's story, like, even though, it is just a thing that a guy lived, it is just like the perfect beats of the biopic in terms of ascension, but still being miserable. And there just is none of that. Like, they focus on his like romantic life around that time where he was bouncing back and forth between these two women, and they're both great. Elle Fanning and I forget the other lady's name, but Joan Bates, who was another big folk musician at the time who he had like an on and off again thing with for a long time. And I kind of came away from the film being like, I want to know more about her. I want to dig deeper into her career. Cause
there's a great documentary on her career that came out a couple of years ago, actually. It's like, she's amazing because I think like in the shadow of these like very, very famous men, like I think a lot of them drew a lot of inspiration from her, and also being like a woman of color in that very white scene at that time too. Like, she's a fascinating subject. Like, I would love to see a biopic about her.
That's that actor is Monica Barbaro, and I think she's been nominated for this in a bunch of the awards ceremonies.
She's great. I think she's the best thing in it. I hadn't seen her in anything before, but I really liked her in this. And like, I mean, that's the kind of the thing that makes the Chalamet performance stick out and seem.
Right.
And it's hard because it's like, yes, the Bob Dylan voice itself is very cartoonish. So there is an element where, he's speaking and you're like, it just sounds stupid. But then it's like, well, I guess that's just what Bob Dylan kind of sounds like.
I mean, I talked about this on our bonus podcast a few weeks ago, maybe at the end of last year, Tommy. I loved The Apprentice, the Ali Abbasi directed film with Sebastian Stan as Trump. He's not doing a Trump impression in it. He's not leaning into the voice. He's got the mannerisms enough to sort of for you to infer a lot of that Trumpism onto the performance. But he's doing it in a really subtle way, and I think it's how you got to do it with someone as caricatured as Trump or Dylan. Like, you're right, the voice is just. It's like Austin Powers. You just do the voice and that's it. But it's very superficial.
Well, it's the same, like Schwarzenegger. Most people, when they do a Schwarzenegger voice, they're doing an impersonation of the impersonation of Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know what I mean? Like, if you and also, he's really leaning into the very established voice that we have in our head of like top line Dylan, but it's like. Sure. This is like when he's 20. Like, this is when he's young, and he wouldn't have, I think there's an element to him where he's like, really hamming it up, and as he gets older, and that's how he's singing and everything. There's just all this stuff in there that is like, it really feels like a biopic that is for the heads. Like, you are really tapped in, and you're interested to see this 3-year window, and you're getting a kick out of seeing this superstar portraying him. Like, there's a bit where they're recording Highway 61 Revisited, and there's like, he's got all his session musicians in there, and this guy shows up and is like, oh, I got told I could play, and they're like, yeah, we've already got a guitar player, we don't need you. And he's like, oh, okay, and he like goes to leave, but then at the last minute, like, he sneaks in back into the studio, and there's an organ there that no one's playing, and they're like, okay, like a Rolling Stone, take 3. And they just kick off, and he just like hits the keys and does that like wee 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 that's at the start, and you see Bob Dylan look over and go like, that's nice, and it's like, why is this in here? And then that's it. It's like, that's nothing comes of it. Nothing else gets made about that guy, and it's like, oh, okay, I guess that's just some rock tidbit that like that guy wasn't meant to be in the studio and he snuck in, but also. there's no like just being like, yeah, there was just an organ there in the studio. I mean, maybe that is how, who knows, but like
it is
just little tidbits like that where it's like, why is this in here? What's this got to fucking do with anything?
It's also
really
like those
giving Walk Hard. It is
yeah.
Was it John Michael Higgins who's like the record producer? And he's like, does the classic like, well, kids, I think we got a hit. Like it really, is like that is happening throughout the whole film.
Yeah, I feel like it's also like I was kind of curious as to like what part of his life is documented in the film. It's like, oh, cool, like the Newport Folk Festival, like the most documented fucking piece of musical history in Bob Dylan's career.
That's kind of the most interesting bit of it because it gives them an excuse to like have a big crowd, people booing, there's fist fights
what
backstage.
I want is like the story of like Bob Dylan doing like the Victoria's Secret commercial underneath the water.
Right.
Like that's what I want. Right. That's so much more interesting because it's like, what happened between that and this? Like what happened there?
When he performs now, why can't you understand a single fucking word he says? Because he's like mumbling and grumbling. Like,
why are all the lights off?
Oh man, it reminded me when I was watching it of where I had this housemate ages ago and he worked at a bar. He was a cool guy, but he was like just out all the time. And I was up late one night and he came home and he'd had to like climb out back he'd lost his key. And so he like just appears in the backyard, scares the shit out of me. And I let him in and he's like fucking off his head. I'm like, what'd you do tonight? He's like, oh, went to a concert. Went gig. I'm like, oh, okay, where? And he like names this big venue in Melbourne. I'm like, all right, who was on there? And he's like, and he's just arming and ahhing for fucking ages. And then finally he's like, Bob Dylan. I'm like, the most, one of the most famous musicians on the planet. And you've left the gig and immediately it's just gone from your head because you're that fucked up.
Oh, incredible. Half the gig as well.
Yeah, fuck.
But yeah, I liked it more as it went on. The Newport stuff, I was at least kind of just, interestingly filmed. But again, like, you've got Elle Fanning's great. What's her name again?
Monica Barbaro.
She's great. You've got Edward Norton doing a fucking great Edward Norton performance.
Okay.
Great.
You got all these like other great people in there, which just kind of makes this like weird, cartoonish, freaky little boy doing his Dylan kind of really stick out.
He's
I don't know. Like
theatre school, and I can't unsee it.
Yeah.
I can't unsee how fucking performing arts school he is. Even that footage of him talking to Little B, and he's like, "Little B, I want to ask a girl out. Can you give me a blessing?" Like it's so like space jump. Like it's very
Yeah. I think I'm out. I think this is the one where I'm like, I'm out. I don't even the stuff I've thought he's been good in. I don't feel like, what you want from these people that are bigged up as like this is the next generational talent is to feel like no one else could have done this. This is, and I just don't, I've not seen anything that he's been in where I've felt like that about it. Even when I thought he's good, it's not been like no one else could do this to the same level.
I mean, it's hard to say without, like maybe they could have cast someone very similar, but I do think him in Call Me By Your Name was pretty unique.
Yeah.
And he was good in Lady Bird, but maybe that is a more a role that could have suited more people, but
this is the problem. He's good in those roles where he's like an awkward little kid because he was an awkward little kid. And now we're at this point where he's like, he's meant to be Leo and he's just, I just don't think he's got that, like that charm to him, honestly.
Yeah.
Sure.
I will say the documentary I was thinking of, Joan Baez's I Am a Noise, came out 2 years ago. Very good.
Okay.
Highly recommend.
I'll check it out. Have you seen Factory Girl? Lauren really wants to go in on a rewatch of Factory Girl. Because Dylan is in that, and he held up that from coming out for a long time because I don't know.
Oh, I don't know the story about that.
Lauren was saying there's some version of the film where he's like, there's all this stuff about Dylan being implicated in having led her to her death in some way, and so he sued
I haven't
them and
watched
held
it
it
in
up.
ages, but I just, like many women who have arty bisexual tendencies, I went through an Andy Warhol phase, and so I watched every movie about Andy Warhol and Edie Sedgwick. So
yeah, you're describing Lauren.
It's crazy we still haven't hung out. Anyway, speaking of arty women with bisexual tendencies, can I tell you guys about Babygirl?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So I went to a screening of this a couple nights ago, and it was an influencer screening, which I feel like you're saying, this, like, seems like a lot of old heads in the Bob Dylan screening. A lot of horny people. People who are famously horny in public in this one. And little old me. Can
I take some guesses as to who was also in the crowd?
Please.
Well, I mean, just because you're saying people who are famously publicly horny, I would assume Abby Chatfield is the top of the invite list for something of this nature.
So she wasn't there, but the people she has like a kink kit, and the brand that she works with, the creators of that brand were there. People like that.
Her and her Peking Duck fella got a private screening so that they could get it on in the cinema if the mood struck them. That's the top influencer level.
I think I said this last time I was on, but I do believe we need to bring back rooting in the cinema.
All right.
I think it's time to at least start jorking it. Anyway.
Yeah. I just quickly, on that, a friend of mine, this is so long ago, there's a detail in the story that will date it, but when we were like, in our early 20s, he was like, oh man, I went to the movies with my girlfriend last night, and like, she went down on me in the cinema. It was like fucking really cool. And then we like started having sex. Like, she was on top of me. I'm like, oh wow. What movie was it? And he goes, Capote. So she's like on top of him, and he's just like looking over her shoulder at this like very effeminate Philip Seymour Hoffman on the screen.
I love my swans. Like, that's so funny. Oh
awesome
my god.
Shit.
Yeah, that's it. It's like another great Oscar Beatty biopic. This is funny, right? Because it was so a very already horny crowd, and someone audibly moaned in the cinema when Nicole Kidman and Harris Dickinson first kiss. That's how revved up it was.
Okay, great.
I fucking love this film. Of course I was going to love this film. But I think what is so interesting is that it's being like advertised as like this horny romp, and it's like you kind of think it's maybe like a 50 Shades of Grey thing, or I don't know, but it's not. It's like a comedy. It's a satire.
Right.
It's so much funnier than I think it's being marketed. It's more kind of like a satire on like okay. Best way I can describe it is like it's like a Euro art house film, kind of close to like Worst Person in the World, but instead of like a millennial woman, it's like a late Gen X woman, and it's about like the role of her as a mother, the role of her as a boss, like kind of girl boss, gilded cage kind of stuff, sexual dynamics in the workplace, that kind of thing. Definitely hot too, and there's definitely like transgressive stuff in it. Okay, but I would say like in terms of like freaky deaky shit, Saltburn is way freakier.
Yeah, okay.
Anything
it does
here.
feel like it's a film that's been made purely to be recapped on that Evan Ross Katz guy's Instagram.
Yes.
It feels like it's been made exclusively
Mother is
for
mothering,
him.
etc., etc.
Yeah.
I loved it though.
It's directed by the director of Bodies, Bodies, Bodies.
Yeah, Helena Rain, and she wrote it as well. Yeah. So it's like
it's really funny, like social satire.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's a social satire, and like this Gen Z dude, like it's so funny we're talking about Timothée Chalamet, because like I would say the Harris Dickinson character in this, Samuel, he is barely able to look people in the eye. He's like he's just like, oh, like get in the floor or whatever. I don't know. Like, and it's so funny because it's like, oh man, this director hates men like this. Hates Gen Z. Like hates Gen Z. Sure. And there's some like really great lines about like how women in power shouldn't be acting like this, and like from the younger generations. And it's like, it's kind of great. Like if you kind of want to satire about I don't want to say like woke politics, because that makes me sound like I'm like going like, yeah, finally woke's dead. But It's in the most
yeah.
annoying people. Like I would say it's interesting that it's a film that's being marketed to people who post infographics about consent, but it's like
it's a
parody of them.
Beautiful.
Right.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's like a really nasty, mean little film, kind of like Tar. Or like I really loved it. It's like really crunchy, and I really want to see it again.
Cool.
But then also Nicole Kidman is incredible in it. The way they're filming her, right? You can see all of her wrinkles. There's like back dimples. You see her tits. Like she's on the floor, like growling and shit. Like it is incredible.
I just want to say I was about to say that I was about to say before that I wanted to see it.
Yeah.
I was going to say that before you said that you see her tits. I know this sounds like revisionist, but I was about to say it, and then you started talking, and I was like, oh, I'll finish this thought after. But now that you've said that you see her tits, it does sound like that's like the only reason that I want to go. But I think if you go back and you listen, you'll hear that I am interested even. Yeah. And watch the video.
And listen. Yeah.
And I'm holding up a sign saying yes and all this kind of shit.
Mothering,
etc. It's just bad coincidence that
it's unrelated that your other two favorite films are Killing of a Sacred Deer and Eyes Wide Shut. Like
that's crazy.
That's just random.
Yeah, and you always talk about how you love that scene in The Paperboy where Zac Efron pisses on Nicole Kidman, I believe. No,
just realizing how few Nicole Kidman films I've seen as we're doing this.
Dude, this is the crazy thing though. So I went to this screening and shout out John Glover, great comic, Gen Z as fuck. He was like, "Oh yeah, I've never really seen Nicole Kidman in anything." I'm like, "Excuse me?" And he was like, "Yeah, I've seen Bedazzled and Bombshell." And I was like,
"Okay,
what the fuck?" And so now I'm like, "Okay, so you don't even know about To Die For. You don't even know about Practical Magic. You don't even know about her wigs. Like this is crazy."
Yeah.
But I think she is a little freak, and she is doing freak shit. And we are like lucky to be alive at the same time as her.
I never got it. I was never really much of a fan, but then I think it was probably, God, what's it called? Big Little Lies, that series that she's in, where again, she's a freaky, nasty little girl. And I was like, oh, okay, I think I've kind of misread what this person is trying to do. Because she had a period kind of like in the middle there where she was doing like, I guess a lot of like fairly safe kind of stuff or just stuff that didn't really interest me so much. Yeah. But now she's like in this era where she's like doing a lot more interesting stuff and like, yeah, people seem like they're really back in on Nicole Kidman.
Yeah, I think she's always been doing really interesting stuff. And then she also does really mainstream stuff. And I think we're in this weird time where we're seeing more arty weird shit generally because we're seeing less movies. So we're kind of seeing more weird shit next to like hugely commercial shit at the same time. And
it does feel like a movie like this, like a small film gets kind of blown up to being a big film. Like there's kind of not as much line. Like something like this, 20 years ago was probably the equivalent of like, did you guys ever see that film Roger Dodger?
No.
It's like this small film that I was like obsessed with when I was like 18, and it was real, maybe on at the Kino for like 2 days, and then just not quite a straight to DVD, but definitely that's where you discover it. And then now a film that is just like a quite small scale thing can get like really blown up because of a social media campaign behind it. And like, yeah, if there's one or two memeable things from it, like as you say, them really leaning into the like, oh, well, if we focus in on how horny it all is, then that's really going to get people talking. And
yeah, it is a horny film, but it's, I think it's more of a mean and nasty film. It's a mean film about how annoying people are. And Antonio Banderas is great at it. Very fun double screening after Paddington in Peru.
Hell yes.
Yeah, I really loved it, and I feel like people are gonna really be like, what the fuck, when it happens.
Yeah, okay.
I had no idea it had any of this sort of tone to it. I'm really excited to see it now.
Yeah, it's a real mean film. I've been, again, I think I told you guys last time I was on, I've been watching a lot of like Euro art porns from the 70s.
Yes.
And it almost feels like that. Like there's this this film that I watched called The Licorice Quartet. It's by Radley Metzger, who I think it was produced by Andy Warhol, and it's literally like all these American directors just got asked if they wanted to go to Italy and shoot in old chateaus, and it's like all the storylines are like, a family is irrevocably changed when a sexy stranger washes up on the shore. Or like, or other films that are like, a couple who settle a bet by trying to fuck as many people as they can in a weekend. Like, it's all these, and it's just the people being
That's
like...
That's the plot of The Wogboy 2.
Yeah, are you
house?
Yeah.
Instead of them coming to Australia, it's Americans going to Italy. And I kind of like this throwback to like just like people being like, yeah, sex is fucking weird and crazy, and we're going to shoot it in this kind of hyper realistic way, and it's just going to be hot people. Yeah. Anyway.
Hey, Ben, you and I should go see Babygirl at FOMO Cinema, and we can have I assume they've got some special food tie-in. We can have like the 10-inch gag reflex hot dog or whatever they're fucking putting on.
They've got those boozy milkshakes. That seems perfect. Just slurping it up.
No, but they often do. If it's like a big enough film, they'll have like 2 like food menu items that kind of tie in, like I don't know, maybe a fish taco for Babygirl or something like that.
Fucking hell. I did see A24 is selling dog leads, like Babygirl themed dog leads.
Right.
I'm like, that rocks. That absolutely fucking rocks.
They get it. Yeah, they get it.
Well, a movie I know, Jen, you've seen, because this is one of the worst films I've ever seen, and I don't understand how it's fucking winning awards. It's going to be up for an Oscar, multiple acting awards. Emilia Perez.
Hell yeah.
What the fuck is this?
Now, I will say, I said to you, Ben, we should watch this for the pod because Jen's seen it.
Yep.
I kind of made you watch it. I then didn't watch it, in part because after seeing A Complete Unknown, I was like, I don't know if I can do another. I don't know if I can do another bad award contender back to back. I feel like I've already got my. I've got my like thing that'll send me into a rage if it racks up too many awards, kind of like under my belt. Having 2 is too many.
Yeah, I think you would go full Columbine, honestly, if you saw this.
Cinema's good at the moment. There are lots of good films out, but I don't want to feel like only the really bad ones are getting like winning stuff.
I rarely hate watch. I've never seen The Room. Like my time is valuable, and there's too many good movies out there. But I was so curious about this. Based on what you said, Jen, based on the like clips that I'd seen that were mocking it, I just thought this looks like a fascinating, absolute failure, and it was. It was very crazy because like the director of this, Jacques Audiard, he directed A Prophet, which is a fantastic film. It's like a prison film, really well acted, like beautifully shot, well directed, and this is insanity.
Yeah.
So for anyone who
can I ask,
yes.
When you watched it, did you find yourself being like, I really never thought it was going to be like this?
It kept surprising me, honestly.
Not in a good way. Like,
no. And I almost got tricked at the start because the start isn't awful. It's a fairly good setup. It's a woman working as like a lawyer, but an assistant to the main defending lawyer in this case. It's like a murder case. She does all the actual work. The main guy takes credit for it. She's frustrated, but she's like this motivated and talented woman. And there's like there's a song early on about her feelings about that. And I was like, oh, this isn't that bad. And that was the best part of the film in terms of actual quality.
Yeah.
It got funnier.
Vaginoplasty. Penis to vagina.
Yeah, so this film, for those who don't know, and I don't feel like this is something that's, aside from being mocked and aside from being like for the sort of awards hounds, I don't really feel like this is something that's broken through in Australia yet. It's on Netflix in America, so I assume that's why so many people have seen it despite it having such a weird synopsis. It is a musical. It's written and directed by a Frenchman, but it is set in Mexico. It is about
It's shot in France as well.
Shot in France as well.
No Mexicans in the main cast.
Yes. It follows a Mexican lawyer who is hired by a cartel king to assist him in transitioning into being a woman and everything that goes along with that. That is the plot of the film. Also, it is a musical, a fully choreographed, hyper-real, classical musical. And that turned out to be a bad movie. Who could have predicted?
Yeah.
Did you see this at the cinema, Jen?
No, is this behind paywall or no?
No, it's public. So you've
public.
got an American Netflix account.
You got a VPN.
I paid money. Yeah, I got a VPN. Whatever, fuck it. I used to work for the cunts. I got a VPN.
Yeah.
I just logged into American Emilia Perez talk or whatever the fuck, and watched it there. And I'm glad I didn't pay money for it because it's it's crazy to me as well. Like, you have to have a stunning stunning arrogance to be like, I want to write a film about trans people in Mexico, and what I'm going to do is get fundamental parts of the transitioning process wrong. Just straight up wrong. There's a scene with a surgeon where the surgeon who specializes in transition surgery he's like, I don't know why people do this. It's like, brother, this is your bread and butter. Of course, like a real person who does this job would probably have some kind of and he's like, I don't think they really are transitioning. And it's like, so you're a TERF fucking transitioning doctor? This is crazy.
A gender reassignment surgeon who is singing about how he doesn't believe that they actually change, like, it's
genders.
It's fucking insane.
That sounds like a South Park episode. This truly sounds like if this had marionettes, it'd be a Trey Parker and Matt Stone production.
Yep.
And then there's a song later on, and it's like, I'm just gonna spoil some shit because fuck this movie. There's a bit where the kid is like, so Emilia Perez, she's transitioned, she's looking after her. Basically, someone described it as Mrs. Doubtfire meets Sicario.
Sick.
It's shot like Sicario, and half
sounds
of it
good.
too. Yeah. So anyway, basically,
I would like that.
She's pretending to be an aunt to her children and getting them to live with her.
Yeah.
And her ex-wife live with her so that she can look after them.
Yes.
There's a bit where she's tucking one of her children to bed, and there's a song one of her children sings, which is like, oh, wow, you smell like my dad. But the thing about, like, hormone replacement therapy is that it actually changes people's smells. Like, because men and women, biological female gene, I'm probably saying this wrong and I apologize. I am very clumsy with this. I'm not as fucking bad as the director of this trans movie. But
you're doing better than the gender reassignment surgeon.
Yeah, this is the thing. Something like this being in the culture just lowers the bar for everyone. So it's like you can just go completely shoot from the hip and be like, hey, well, I'm not as misinformed as that bad film. So
I'm not getting nominated for an Oscar for like how little I fucking know about this. Anyway, so there's a bit where she's like, you smell like my dad. And it's like, if you're on HRT, your smell, your pheromones change. So it's just
your body chemistry changes.
And absolutely. So it's like, again, to hang like an entire emotional moment of something that wouldn't happen is crazy.
Yeah.
There's even a bit...
Sorry, go.
No. Oh, no, there's a bit where she's like, the reveal to the lawyer. Like, so initially you see Emilia Perez before transitioning and they're like a Mexican gangster, right? And they've got a grill and stuff. And then the lawyer's like, are you for real? And then Emilia Perez... pre-transition just flashes her tits.
Yeah.
And they're like, I've been on HRT for 2 years. And it's like, okay, hold on. But like, wouldn't your wife have noticed this? Like that you just suddenly have an immaculate pair of tits?
Yeah.
So convincing that you're going to get an international lawyer to like risk their life to help you.
I just want to say, I was going to say before that I'm going to watch this film. I'm definitely going to watch this film. And it... Yeah, I actually think I did say that earlier that I plan to watch this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, again, watch this movie to see how low the bar is to get an Oscar nomination. But I read this really great article. I think it's called "Are the Academy Voters Actually Watching This?" And it's kind of centered around The Brutalist, because The Brutalist is 3.5 hours long, including an intermission.
Yep.
And people are like, okay, so how are they actually watching all of the shortlisted films? Because like that's so long. And my friend was saying to me, well, that makes sense why Emilia Perez is so present in the awards conversation, because it's been on Netflix since I think October maybe.
Right.
And so it's like, oh, it's literally piped into their houses already. It's so easy for them to go and watch. I think it is just like 2-hour film or something like that.
Yeah.
It's
not
already
crazy,
there, and it's a bit arty or whatever. So
Sure.
Well, I
It's
would say
speaking
also
to,
like
the current social consciousness.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. If
Of
it's like
someone out of touch.
yeah, if
Yes.
they're not watching these films and it's like all you see is the log line of like, hey, it's about someone transitioning and it's set in Mexico, then it's like, oh, well, this just
And it's a
makes this is the
musical.
sort of thing we should be
Right.
like
Yeah.
platforming without having actually
very
watched it
worthy.
and seeing how
Yeah.
tactless it is.
I almost think it's more maybe that case, Tommy. Like they're literally not watching it; they're reading a description and going, well, it must be good." And so it's not just the trans subject matter that is dealt with poorly; it is all of the Mexican stuff as well. It's so insane. Why not set it at least in France? And some drug lord in, the Paris ghetto. Why transplant that story to a country you have clearly no understanding?
It did feel like we'd gotten to a point where this kind of stuff wouldn't happen with films anymore. Like, remember that, I forget what it was called, that Cameron Crowe movie where, was it Emma
Aloha?
Stone?
Yeah.
Was playing like was she playing a Hawaiian person? And it was, I remember that being like the first big, like, conversation that I can remember around like, hey, it's kind of not cool to just get on there and, pretend to be of a different race. And hey, while we're at it, that goes for, having an intellectual disability or, all this kind of stuff. And it really did feel like, oh, okay, we're not really allowed to do that anymore. Stanley Tucci, you get a pass. You're allowed to pretend to be gay.
He can be gay.
Sure.
He can be gay.
He's allowed to.
Yeah.
Because he
Daniel-
dresses well and he smells nice.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
Bradley
Daniel
Cooper
Craig,
can
I guess
pretend
we'll
to be
give a
straight.
pass to. Like, who knows? Maybe
Yeah.
you've experimented in your past. We'll let
I'm
that
sure
go on
he
this
That's
film.
the thing. All
He's a
actors,
theatre
I
boy.
assume, this is so rude.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
actors, and you can cut this out. All actors, I assume, if you're male, I assume at one point you've at least had your dick sucked by a dude or sucked a dick.
Well, I guess
assume
too.
that because of the actors I have met in my life, because of drama school.
Yes.
There's always latent bisexuality in the air around these people.
Everyone's massaging everyone else's.
Exactly.
I just think
It's very
too, in the case
touchy-feely
of
culture.
in the case of Daniel Craig, it's in the best interests of the public and the culture to see James Bond suck a cock. I think it's like once you're canonically Bond in people's heads, you kind of get a pass to do all this stuff because it's like, for someone out there, that's really fulfilling a pretty big fantasy for them. So it's sort of, it does it hey, maybe that role could have gone to a queer actor and it didn't, and that's a shame. But the net positive is worth way more than just
James
one
Bond
person's work.
Yeah, and I was gonna see queer before I had that thought. I am so excited to see it though. Like, that's going to be, I think, one of the bangers of the year. But Emilia Perez, absolute failure.
What was the moment you were watching Emilia Perez and you were like, no, surely not?
I think it was probably the scene, the vaginoplasty scene. I think that's where it jumps the shark. That's 20 minutes in.
See,
Right.
yeah. I actually love that scene because it's like, at least there's some kind of fun in this.
You know what, for some reason I'm picturing in my head when you describe that scene? I don't know why I've seen this film, but who's in it? That comedy, The Sweetest Thing with Cameron Diaz.
Yes.
And
Who
else is in it? Your
so
penis
big.
is too big?
Yeah.
It
is exactly the tone of that. It's exactly the tone of that.
Yeah.
I would say maybe that is probably my favorite scene in the film because it feels like a John Waters fucking film at that point. And you're like, okay, so maybe this is like actually super radical and crazy. And then the rest of the film is like, they're killing the trans people in the streets and also women. And it's just like, what? And like, you don't know anything about any of these women. You don't care about any. I don't know, man. Like, it's just, French people are crazy.
That's
crazy. That's another thing you can cut out if you want.
No, we'll leave that in.
Yeah, leave that in. French filmmaking culture, I'm realizing they get to do whatever the fuck they want. Yes. Also, like, I think it was like Givenchy produced this film. There was some fashion house that produced.
Oh no, Yves Saint Laurent, I think.
Yves Saint Laurent produced this film.
Yes, yeah, bizarre.
So you're like, French people have sat around a dinner table having a baguette, drinking du vin, and they're talking about this film and being like, "This is a
masterpiece.
Yeah,
yeah. And like, not to again, this is maybe nitpicking. Like Selena Gomez, she is, I think, raised in America in the film, but like. Strong American accent when speaking Spanish in Mexico, apparently living in Mexico. I think people have criticized Zoe Saldana's accent. I don't know enough about the differences between. I think she's Colombian, and she's playing a native-born Mexican. But just all of those decisions, it's like, man, if you're gonna write a film about Mexico set in Mexico. Go to Mexico. There's a shit ton of great actors who are from Mexico, who are in America, or just in America working there. Like, every level of decision making was just so misguided and arrogant. Like you said, it's like, so you don't give a fuck. You don't care about these actual people.
That's it. It's like, it's a really weirdly dehumanizing story that you're meant to be like, oh, I care about I don't know. I don't understand it, and I'm mad.
Yeah. I feel
like
I do.
I will watch anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
If this is going to be this ongoing narrative of people losing their minds about how well this is doing in the award season, I feel like I do.
You should watch it.
I should watch it just to be able to like really get into what's being, all the memes and people
just don't pay for it. Don't fucking pay for this shit. Honestly. And it's so funny too, like the Netflix of it all. Dave Chappelle's like trans controversy, and they're like, and then they quickly followed it up with like Hannah Gadsby's Night of Queer Artists, and then they followed up with this, and it's like, just just tell them you hate them if you hate them,
or just publicly go, hey, we don't give we actually don't give a fuck. We'll put on anything. We don't care.
We don't care. Yeah. Well. Something I do care about is the television show Severance, directed by Ben Stiller, created by there's another guy who's
there's a different
credited
dude
at the start.
Yeah,
but we've been fans of this show for nigh on 3 years, Tommy.
We've been waiting a long goddamn time for this second season. So Jen, talk us through very quickly before we get into season 2. Your experience mainlining season 1, because I kind of felt like I had it all kind of, locked in my head. I wanted to get a rewatch in, but didn't get round to it. And then when you load up the first episode of season 2 on Apple TV, it gives you a little season 1 recap. And I was like, yeah, I guess I remember way less of this show than I thought I did.
Right.
So that's something that really struck me, like, initially, is like, it's a very dense show. There's a lot going on. At times I found it very hard to follow, but I also, like, in the way that The Wire is too, it's like, you're like, I'm sure this will wrap itself up some point in the future. I just got to trust in it, right?
It just, even like on the simplest level, the mental gymnastics of like, so when they're in there, they don't know anything about, but then when he's saying that, that's, like they're keeping tabs on what every character knows about each situation at any given moment is pretty complex.
Yeah, I would say, like, it really only locked for me that their consciousness inside the severed floor is literally like they've never seen daylight. Like, that didn't even strike me until, like, I would say halfway through the season. I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. Like, they literally, this office is their entire life.
They're never sleeping. They're like literally never having downtime.
These are the only people they know, and they don't know anything about themselves. And I was like, okay, that's so, I loved it. Do you want me to recap it, or do you want me to, are you just asking me my vibes?
Oh, no, just quickly, so overall, like taking it all in.
Loved it. I loved that it seems to have like a kind of Scandi noir vibe to it as well. Everything's snowy, everything's cold, everyone's got like kind of Scandi sounding names like Mrs. Solveig and Helle and stuff like that. Adam Scott's great. God, Adam Scott's he's like the opposite of a character actor, I'd say, where he's like so good at playing like a guy. Just like some guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he's so
he's
good
also
at that.
like he has this, he's been in a lot of great comedy films and then Parks and Rec obviously, and like probably a guy who as an actor, he was maybe starting to think like, hey, I've been pretty lucky. I've done the biggest thing I'm ever going to do. And then just like lands this that he's perfect in.
Yeah.
It's a massive success. It's like you just, and me and Ben are, I don't know about you, Jen, but we're big fans of the podcast he does with Scott Aukerman where they recap U2 albums and Springsteen albums, and so it is that like parasocial thing because we like hear him on a pod semi-regularly and then like seeing him in this big thing, it's like, yeah, it's that guy from that Talking Heads pod that we listen to.
You're talking REM re-me or whatever.
Yeah.
He is so well cast, like you say, he's a non-character actor. He is a leading man in a character actor's body. And such a good, like this is, it's as if it was purpose-built for him. Like playing the generic man who was born essentially, like 35 years old in an office. That's his entire existence. And then, I think that his life outside of it, which has so much tragedy in it, he is also able to imbue that with a real sense of pathos and like, he's so charismatic. Like, for how generic a dude he is, he has so much charisma. He's just perfect in it.
Everyone in this, they kind of have to play two versions of the same character because they've got to have, it's all got to be the same person, but you've got to believe that they don't know anything, but they do have this like in season 1 when they get into Tuturo's character when he's on the outside, he's been painting the hallway. So it's like, of course they do have. That stuff is stored away in there somewhere. And the way people kind of like hold themselves slightly differently when you see them on the outside.
It's amazing. Like even I was really like focusing in on that, like the way they shoot and light them in the severed floor, where it's like, they're all like, even Adam Scott's character, it's like there's like a cakiness to his foundation that makes him look very bright in the face. And then the way that they kind of force, when they go in the lift and you see them kind of drop back into the outer world, and they do this like force focus thing with the lens where like the depth of field in the scene like just kind of changes. And then you kind of all of a sudden are aware of like the bags under his eyes, the kind of like veins in his face. And you're like, man, like that's like such a small thing. But it's such a nice way to differentiate that these two people are completely different in the same body.
Yeah, and like, this idea that you would like one day on the office feel like shit and have no idea why, and maybe it's because your Addie was out getting drunk or didn't sleep or whatever. So Jen, I don't know if you were across this element of it, but when it was airing week to week with season 1, I don't think they said if it was a limited series or like what was going on. And so we watched it thinking it was a one and done. It's very much kind of like set up in that way. And then I think it was like maybe the second last episode, they were like, yeah, it's been renewed for season 2. And it was just kind of this news tidbit that was snuck out that then we were like, well, thank God we knew that before watching the final episode, because the final episode of season 1 ends on this massive cliffhanger. But it really did seem like it was building to just like, oh, this is just like a 10-hour movie that's going to have like a real resolution to it.
Well, it's so interesting too, like, because, watching it for the first time the week that David Lynch dies, right? And so like Twin Peaks is so in the culture. And I remember, thinking about, like, I watched Twin Peaks on streaming, so I didn't get that week. But thinking about watching that show week to week, having to wait and a week between each, and then also having to watch it at the broadcasted time.
Yeah.
Right.
With ad breaks and stuff like that. I was like, that's actually crazy. And then also, I think it was a similar thing, right? Where people didn't really know if it was going to get a second season. And everyone kind of thought the mystery would wrap up in the end of the first season. Then we kind of get the second season, which turns into its own thing. And I was like, it's so interesting because it feels like, I don't know if I'm reading this into it, but it does feel like this has a very Lynchian kind of like, the idea of a liminal space and things like that. Like that does feel very David Lynch inspired. Some of the way like the stylization of the different spaces is so like, and the way people speak in this kind of very contrived way. I'm like, these are all very David Lynch like threads that I'm picking up on.
Absolutely,
so it's kind of like interesting that like I've just started watching it at this point. Like it feels very Twin Peaks to me.
Yes, Milchek especially speaks in this very weirdly kind of
which is interesting because I feel like a lot of the theorizing about this show, the analysis, like it's been obsessed over since, it came out in 2022, the first season. So there's been a long time for people to break it down. And a lot of that has been focused on the literal plot rather than the fact that this clearly is like come out of we talked about it at the time, Tommy, like this idea that you are a different person at work. Like, this show is a metaphor for how people act at work versus in their personal lives and the way that those lives can interact and conflict. But that doesn't seem to really be something that anyone is talking about. And I think maybe it's the perfect time to have watched it, Jen, with Lynch in the back of the mind, because I think that's such an interesting aspect of it that seems to get passed over. But there is a lot of plot to talk about. And we should probably get into the episode. What is it called? It's episode 1, season 2. It is called Hello, Mrs. Coble.
Yeah, which is the thing that keeps coming up on the computer screen. So it starts with Adam Scott's character. I think that we're meant to kind of think that this is like immediately after he's had the thing where he's been reawakened out in the real world. And so in his head, this has just happened. There's this crazy shot of him like running around the floor, trying to find the office, getting lost, hitting dead ends. And then he comes out in a new office where... who's there to greet him but George Michael's cousin?
Her? No.
Alia Shawkat.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
Well, and Bob Balaban.
Bob Balaban, so sick to see him in it.
Yeah.
I know they're credited. Those cast members who are playing the new team are like credited for the whole season. I don't know if they come back again. Right. It certainly doesn't seem like it should based on the first episode, but... it'd be great to see those actors again. Before he gets there, he's looking for his wife, and her office, the wellness center, it's been picked clean. There's nothing there. There's no body there, and so immediately he's like, "Well, what the fuck's going on?"
And again, I don't remember them like this being too much of a thing of it in season 1, Jen, but the new team, they immediately start getting into the sort of the stuff you were talking about before, because they know that he's seen the outside world. So they're like, what does the breeze feel like? What's the sky look like? We've all talked about like what we'd love to do, like what we'd like to experience on the outside. And I was like, oh yeah, right. Like that would be a big point of conversation in there, like,
and then they're like slight frustration too when he's like, I don't know, and they're like, fuck dude, like
he's like, I don't care.
No, I loved that moment too where one of them barely speaks English as well, because it's just like this like fun again in the way of like the banality sometimes of just issues in
right,
where he's like, I don't care. A pen.
He asks for a pen and he calls it an ink pencil.
Yeah. Just things like that where you're like, oh yeah, that's right. Again, the grueling drudgery of this place never truly goes away, even after like you commit some like revolutionary act. Like
yeah.
And so then not inspired at all by me returning the Triple J for the 50th.
So Milchek then appears, takes him into his office, and basically shows him a newspaper, which is talking about how, you guys are here. It's been that's when we learn it's been 5 months, right?
Right.
And
do we believe that it's really been 5 months?
I don't think that a lot of what happened or I don't think that a lot of what is told to Adam Scott's character and the other characters as they return is true at all. I doubt a lot.
And that's what I think is so interesting as well, like the 3-year gap of it all too. It's like it's really fucking with you like temporally. Like,
because I was really
the
whole episode I'm like busting to see what's going on the outside, and again I loved the decision to just like really hold that off.
Yes,
for like we don't see anything apart from inside Lumon for this whole episode, which again speaks to like, okay, there's high levels of bullshit going on here. And that's presumably going to be a flip at some point.
And Milchek gives that very corporate like, look, we heard you and we're listening. We've updated and we appreciate your feedback. Like, he
shows him a newspaper of them basically having like a Keys to the City parade where the 4 of them have been sort of held up as heroes for having exposed what was going on. And he basically, what does he say? He talks to him and he's like, look, you know, I had to, did he put him in solitary or something? He's kind of like, they had to really like fuck him up and do some shit to him, and he's sort of like, you know, this is the burden I have to carry as not being severed. Like, I'm gonna have to live with the memories of what I did to you. I put you in that break room for so long, and I made you say and I'm gonna have to live with that. I love that. I love that so much. Yeah.
We also get the new Milchek, which is an 8-year-old girl. Again, like, you're so right, Jen, about the Lynchian stuff. This is so Twin Peaks. It's not explained. Everyone's confused by it, but also kind of immediately accepts it. What's her name? Miss Wong, I think.
Yeah, and one of them goes, why are you so young? And she goes, because of when I was born. And so, he gets told that he got given, his Audi got given, like pleaded to come back in.
Yes.
And he's told that the whole rest of his team opted to not. Is that right?
Yeah. They chose to assume resign. They didn't want to go back.
And so he's like, why would I have done that? That makes no sense that I would want to, do this to myself. He tries to sneak a little note into the pocket of his new elder team member, sneak a note for him to take out and for his Audi to read, basically saying, strap a bomb to me when I come back into work. He gets found out, and then he is sort of taken away by Milchek and sort of scolded and put into the elevator again, where he then reawakens on like a different floor.
Yeah, is it before that he commandeers the speaker and talks to the board?
That's right.
The board,
he tries to do that. Yeah.
Because he doesn't believe that the others have truly wanted to resign. And he's like, I want to hear it from them.
Yeah. And that's when, he's punished and he's like sent to this other department area. And again, because he stuffs him in the lift and then you see him kind of like reactivate on another floor. And it's a little unclear as to, was he outside again for a bit and then he's like back again now, or like it's kind of unclear how much time has elapsed in between all that stuff.
Just realizing this, and again, this first time I've recapped this with you, it is like listening to someone describe a dream they had.
Yeah.
Yes. But
he's on this new floor, and then all his old team kind of also reappear out of the elevator.
But you're right. There is that point of transition where, has he been re-educated again? Has he been re-educated? Like, clearly they're able to fuck around with people's minds and personalities and memories. So do we believe any of this?
And again, I think the decision to not show any of the outside is like, we're going to get a flip where you're seeing like, this is how much time actually elapsed in between him being put in the elevator and coming out. It was like a year or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Certainly seems to be heading that way. So, he reconnects with his little crew, with his buddies, and then Milchek comes and takes them to basically like a little screening room where they get shown a bizarrely animated corporate video about the day of oh yeah, because also when they get to that floor, there's this like crazy painting where they've been inserted into the lore of the company and like
or whatever.
the founders
Yeah.
and all this kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. What do they call them? The macro dat.
Yeah, the MacDat uprising or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah. And so
they've also, when they've reconnected, they've shared what they're willing to share about what they saw outside. Irving is very reluctant to share because it's so sad, obviously. Mark S is completely transparent. I forget what we get from Dylan. Because
he kind of doesn't say...
Dylan was in the thingy controlling it from the inside, so I don't think he actually goes back out.
He didn't go out, but he has previously seen that he's got a family, that he's got a wife and kids.
That's right.
Yeah.
He had that one experience. That's why he was the guy staying in there, because he'd like woken up and he's like kids run in and Milchek grabbed him. And then Helly completely lies.
Yeah.
Yep.
Doesn't reveal that she is an Egan. Doesn't reveal that her dad is the CEO.
Yep.
Doesn't reveal that she's there as part of a PR kind of strategy, and that's why she's being documented throughout the first season.
Yeah, I was just in a really boring apartment watching a nature show, and then she says something about, I spoke to this gardener and he was going to talk to the cops, and Irving's like, there's a gardener at night?
Yeah. Yeah.
A night gardener?
She's like,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. Fuck off.
Yeah. Bad
Leave the
liar.
fuck alone.
Yeah,
Shut
I've been
up.
through some shit. Fuck's sake.
Why don't you fucking tell us anything about your experience?
Talk about a rough day at work. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's sus.
Yeah, and so they get shown that video that's all about like the positive change that uprising brought about, and how thankful we are to these people for having done this, and they get given the option of you can stay or leave.
Yeah, like the end of every day, they're going to be able to choose. I think was the deal.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Like you don't have to keep coming in,
But you have to
then
get through the day.
You have to get through the day. And then, I think a lot of this is like, you'll be happy to be locked in jail if you believe that you're there to solve a mystery. Like, I feel a lot of this has been sort of massaged and, directed by Lumon, and it's like, we just want you guys to stay in here. And
Isn't it weird, Ben?
You're in charge.
How it's very Squid Game season 2. Like you get to vote every day of whether you want to stay here or not.
Whether you want to stay here and take down the corporation.
We're not bad. We're giving you an option. If anyone asks, we gave you the choice and you decided to stay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I guess also the main reason Mark decides he's staying is because he's found out that his wife is alive after believing the entire time. Well, after first of all learning he had a wife who died, and then learning that she actually hasn't died on the outside, she's in there on the inside.
Yeah. So he wants to stay for that reason. Helly, obviously, she's ashamed to tell them that, or she's like
in love with Mark, perhaps, or who knows what her
or could be that she is just like she's and it's her outie is just in there undercover. Yeah. Could be part of it.
I kind of thought it was that. I kind of thought that, like you said, Jen, it appears that maybe she is trying to keep Mark away from his wife because she is in love with him, and that is like level 1 of the trick, and then level 7 is, no, that's her outie. She is part of the company, and she's going to do whatever she can to keep these whistleblowers actually still inside.
Yeah. I do love what it's kind of done with this whole like corporate thing of being like, we thank these brave workers for standing up to us, and now they're part of our corporate legacy, and that's that legacy of like.
And they bother to make this like weird stop motion like puppet clay animated video to show people.
It really is kind of amazing because it really speaks to like just how good corporate gaslighting can be sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Yeah, Irving at first kind of seems like he's gonna bail, but then there's a point where he's like, no, I want to leave. And
Yeah.
the other...
He's obviously had his heart broken
Yep.
On the outside and doesn't feel like his innie has a reason to live anymore, essentially.
Because Bird is gone on the inside and Bird is gone on the outside.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
And he basically gets talked into staying by... What's his name again?
Dylan.
Dylan.
Yeah. He's...
And so, they're all now... We kind of leave on them all just at the desk doing the weird little video game thing that is their
scary
job.
numbers.
Yeah.
Sudoku kind of weird thing.
Yeah.
And then we get the flash that Mark is working on his wife's file. And that's, that is where I got worried that they're going to explain what's going on and I'm not going to be that interested.
Yeah.
Like, and hopefully I'm wrong, but I didn't love the sort of literalization of it all. Which obviously, when you have a compelling mystery, it's going to be tough to reveal what the mystery is without continuing to be an engaging show.
This was the problem that Lost fell into, right? It's like, what's an answer that's more satisfying than just the internet speculation when people have come up with every possible idea that it could be.
Do you guys get into the internet speculation of this at all, or do you like to keep it clean and you just bring your own vibe to it? I've
kept it clean. I don't find that stuff to be the most interesting thing about like most shows. Like personally, I'm more about the vibe and the feeling and the what's in the text. You know, like
I mean, it's we talked a lot about the end of Succession and you know, Game of Thrones had a similar thing where people are like, who's it going to be? And it's like, I mean, that's not the most interesting bit. It's going to be one of these people.
Yeah.
And maybe that'll be satisfying and maybe it won't, but it's everything leading up to it is the interesting shit. It's not just the like who's literally sitting on the throne at the end.
Right.
But good first step. It was like weirdly, for having been such a long wait for some of us, it was such a restrained, like you want to see like all this stuff and you're only getting a very like not a ton happens. It is just pretty much like he's on the one floor, then he's on the other floor, reconnects with them. Oh, we can stay or leave. Well, let's all stay. Which is pretty contained for like, having had this like long wait, but I kind of like the way that they're sort of, playing with that. And this, again, like you get so kind of burnt out on shows where you can binge them and you kind of watch, you watch them all or like the whole season in 2 days and you don't really take it in all that much.
Me. Guest on your show,
the way like Netflix puts stuff out, but like this is one that was like, it's made to be like talked about and speculated about and thought about over the course of a week. Like, I really want to know what's going on the outside, and I'm glad that I have to wait a week to possibly, maybe only 1 week, maybe who knows when they're gonna make that big reveal. I could see it being like next episode is just like a flip and it's just all outside, and then from 3 we get into like the cutting back and forth.
I don't want to spoil anything, but and I can't because I haven't seen the next episode, just based on the title of the next episode, I think that's exactly what's going to happen.
Okay.
We're going to get that episode.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Ben's looking at Apple TV and it's just called The Outside Episode, coming Friday.
I really want to see more of Rickon. I want to know what happened after his incredible book launch.
Yes.
Yes. That was one of my favorite parts of the first season was them listening to the extracts.
Yeah.
Like from the book, like camera from the Latin device that takes pictures.
Yeah. Oh, how about when Milchek's talking about why Patricia Arquette got fired And he's like, yeah, she was really horny for you, and she was trying to get
that's right.
in what would be called a thruple, because she'd be in the end. It's like,
Yeah, good stuff. They got a laugh.
Do you think they have thruples on the inside?
Pardon?
Do you think they have thruples on the severed floor? Do you think they have a concept of what thruples were before that?
Oh, I mean, they feel romantic attraction.
Yeah.
Clearly,
Yeah.
So
And they know things. They know about, like, that there's a sky, and that,
Yeah.
you know, it's that weird thing where they know what it, oh, I have a family.
Yeah.
You know, they know these
Right.
concepts and, like, everything exists, but they're just like,
And they know what
I
stuff
don't have
it-
the memory
like-
of what the breeze feels like on my skin.
Like,
Right.
remember that, again, I've just watched the first season, so it's like fresh, but like the room where they walk in and the man's feeding the lambs, and
Yes.
it's like they're not ready yet. So it's
Yeah.
like they obviously know what lambs are, and they know that lambs should be outside. And they know that something was wrong here. Yeah, anyway. I want
Yeah.
an episode on the lambs is what I want.
Yeah, yeah. I want to see what Christopher Walken's up to.
I'd love
Me
to
too.
see. I'd love to see Chris.
I just, again, the pairing of those two, so good.
Yeah,
so
wasn't
good.
that great? Yeah, really
That's
sweet.
that Ben Stiller fucking like producer swing, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like
Yeah,
that's being a nepo baby for good. That's what you use it for. Is to just get fucking incredible actors to be gay.
yeah, yeah.
Specifically to be gay.
Yeah.
Be in your show.
Yeah, but to be gay on the show together.
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yeah, good to have it back. It feels like, yeah, we've been waiting for this for, like we knew it was being filmed, and then they stopped because of the writer's strike, and then it seemed like it was done, and they kind of took ages to put it out. But
Did you see
yeah.
the footage of they did like a pop up in Grand Central Station in New York,
Yeah.
and it was the severed floor that they'd set up in a glass box in the middle of Central Station in New York.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The actors as their characters in there. I thought that was so sick.
It's
Yeah.
sick, and I think like they'd obviously like advertised that there was going to be like a Severance pop-up thing, and you know you get so used to these
Yeah.
like shitty brand activations that are just so dull, and I think the thing of the actual actors being there was like a huge surprise. So
In
like
character.
the handful of
Yeah,
people that
yeah.
have been like, oh yeah, I'll just maybe there'll be like a free T-shirt or something, and then you get this mini like live play happening in front
Yeah.
of you.
I think that's why it's so good too, right? Because it's speaking to this idea that this could exist in our world. Like it's not
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
far off,
Yeah.
right? That like
Yeah.
we don't know this could be happening, and so that kind of I am.
But
really
you're right, Ben. It
excited.
is like it is the huge like potential of people missing the point. And again, it's very
Right.
similar to Squid Game in that way of like, would you do it? Would you do it? Would you want the? Would you do
Right.
it? Would you want to do it to
Well, that's
possibly get that money, but you might die? It's like no, it's missing the point. It's like Severance is
Right.
totally the same thing. If you could do it, would you do it? It's like it's not. I mean, it's sure.
My fear
Yeah.
is that a lot of people would happily do it in real life.
Yeah.
And I guess, that's the whole 1984 thing of it, right? Like it's people will happily walk into oppression.
yeah.
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 That's the thing that I kind of am like, what is it actually drilling down into, like, critiquing? Because it's obviously like a meditation on capitalism as well, existentialism, some kind of religious aspect, like because of the way they're so fanatical about the founding document, and they're able
Yeah.
to like the way that they were punished in the break room, like I am a stain, this is my like sin to carry and only mine. And I am like, what? Like it is, and I'm like, is this all just subterfuge for something simpler? Is it like, as you're saying, it's about like our performance of ourself, like like our inner life and our outer life, really like very literalized, or is it like a David Lynch thing of like they know and they'll never explain it to us, and it's
Yeah.
none of
Yeah.
our business, or it's
Yeah.
whatever we make of it,
Yeah.
like
Right. I kind of hope it's the latter, but we'll find.
We'll
maybe
find
we
out.
won't find out.
Well, we will be back next week to recap episode 2 and talk about all the other new releases that we've taken down in the previous week. Get onto Patreon,
Yes.
patreon.com/filthycasualspod.
That's right, Tommy. We've only been doing it for 9 years.
We have so many. We have fucking different tags for every different thing, and I can never remember which is which. Get on there if you want to hear more from us talking other movies and TV and whatnot. But thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.